Welcome, everyone, to the Career Change Champions podcast. I am your host, Tonya Montella, and today I have with me Stefanie Fernandes. Stefanie is a parent coach throughout the life cycle, from hypnobirthing to conscious parenting. She combines parent coaching with hypnotherapy to break the cycle of generational trauma, often resulting in dysfunctional parenting. Stefanie is passionate about healing the parent so that their children can grow up free from generational baggage. Stefanie, I absolutely love your mission and the work that you do. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Tanya. Thank you so much for having me.
And at this hour, not to mention, can you share with our listeners where you're based and remind me what time it is there?
I'm in Denmark and it's 9 p.m.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, you're a trooper. I know you've had a long day, so I appreciate you taking the time out to speak with me today. I find what you do so interesting because, like you, I am also a parent and have an interest in psychology and the behavior of people. I myself these days find myself reflecting on my own childhood and how that has shaped me into my adulthood. So I'm curious, take me back to where your career really began and, what you were doing at that time, who Stefanie was then, anything you'd like to share.
Yeah, that's a good question. And we have to go back 20 years, which is, like, when I say that out loud, quite unbelievable. I don't know where the years went, and I don't certainly feel that old yet, which is good. So
yes.
I started off really as a registered nurse. And out of lack of options, I would say, I hated school and I didn't want to finish high school. And so I was looking for a program that I could do without finishing high school, or as part of finishing high school back then. And I immediately loved it. I felt like this was really a calling for me to work with people and to help them. I loved the medical aspect about it. I loved the clinical work so much. And I soon became really like a champion among my peers. And I worked a lot. Nurses work quite irregular shifts, and I worked all the weekends. I worked all the Christmas years that I worked. I voluntarily signed up just so others have the chance to be home with their kids when I didn't have a family yet. But I also soon felt quite stuck, and I didn't know where to go from there. And I didn't have anyone I could share this with at that time, because being a nurse was really like the perfect female job. You are in this helping profession, you can work shifts. So in case once you have kids, you can just pick them up in the morning after your night shift from home to bring them to school. And then you sleep during the day, and your husband is home on the weekend when you go to work. So everything seemed quite perfect. And it's easy to move from one clinical specialization to the other. But somehow it didn't really sit with me that I had to report constantly to the physician. And I'm from Europe, and the hierarchies where I worked were quite clear. You report as a nurse to the physician, even though you had your own scope of work and you had your own nurse manager. But just traditionally, that was just how it was handled, and I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the professional and the personal skills to challenge that. And that made me very frustrated. I managed to still attend to my patients, but I felt more and more unsatisfied in a daily job. And I moved a bit from one ward to the other. Then I went to outpatient care, and I went to different types of service delivery in healthcare. But it always stayed with me, that unsatisfied feeling, and I not really knowing how to handle it. So I decided I would leave the profession, which was it was a very big step at the time, because I was only 25, and I was without plan. Like I had no clue what to do. And my first idea was that I would go back to study. I would study arts, the history of arts. And I didn't know even what I was going to do with it. I just felt, okay, why don't I do something that I like? Fine. I signed up for the course, and then I met someone, a patient, and he was key in my decision of where I would go next. He was a long-term care patient, and he and I had a very special bond. We could talk for hours at night when I had an easy shift, and he told me, why don't you use what you know already and advance that? You have 5 years of working as a nurse. Don't let that go anywhere. You can use that. Don't start from scratch with art, unless art is really your passion. Well, it wasn't. I just didn't know how to connect what I already knew and had experienced and up-level that. So that was completely new to me. And even though he was not a career coach, but he gave like the best advice I could have gotten at that time. And so I decided to ditch art for now, and I went into healthcare management, thinking that, yes, my drive for independence, for being able to shape my work, being able to shape my day and take decisions, and being really responsible myself for my work, and not needing to report necessarily to someone who would constantly interfere with my plans. That was really the motivation. And then, yeah, I studied that, and I really did enjoy. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So I guess one thing I was wondering as you were describing that is when you said it sounded like you kind of took on different roles at the hospital or the facility that you were working at the time. Do you feel like that was you trying to find the thing and trying to find what was right for you, right? Because you said you know something didn't sit right. Was that your way of trying to find it?
Yeah, I did it back then, and looking back to all the other jobs and roles I had, this was always what I did when I was not very happy and entirely happy with the situation. I would try to tweak it where I was, like not necessarily immediately jumping out of the employment and finding something else or finding another job. I would really try to match my expectations and my needs in the job I already had. Yeah. Unfortunately, in my environment, it was not possible because people are very rigid and boxed up in what they think you should be doing. There is very little flexibility to a certain extent, but the extent was not enough for me to fulfill me.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to hear, because certainly there are times where just making a tweak in what it is that you do, or seeking out a different role at the same place that you're working, you know, not completely switching gears. Certainly there are times where that is the thing that's needed, but I think it's so important, and maybe I'm guessing something that would have been of value to you at that time would be to really take a step back. And this is what I enjoy about the work that I do, to really take a step back and truly think through and map out the things that bring you joy and what your values are, what's important to you in your career, to really understand, is it these tweaks that I'm thinking, or is it something more, or is it something less? Is it something, you know, that's keeping me stuck, that's not within my career? Maybe it's something in my personal life that's driving it. So I think that's really important for folks to hear.
Yeah, I love that, because it reminds me of how hard I tried moving out of the situation I was. I didn't know, I was not so aware, like you describe it really nicely, but back then I didn't have those concepts. I didn't have the concept, and I didn't have those words for needs and satisfaction and passion. I just felt I don't want this anymore, but actually I do like the job, but not like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so many people can empathize and resonate with that. I myself have been there as well. And I hear it a lot amongst women. I think that's kind of what has driven me to focus on serving women in that way. But yeah, it's a habit I think that we all fall into, which is just kind of, going on about your life and your career and trying to make the decisions that you think are right for it without truly sitting down and almost being strategic about it, right? And being very deliberate about the choices that you make in your career. So it's always nice to have that person. And I love hearing that for you, it was actually a patient, no one that does that for a job, but just somebody that was able to give you some sound advice right when you needed it.
Yeah, I was very lucky. Yeah.
So when you said that you took the leap, right, to completely get out of that field, I would call it, and at first you thought it was art. I'm curious because taking a leap, especially given all the tweaks you had attempted and all the time, all the years you had spent doing what you were doing as a nurse, I'm curious what, if you can recall, what was it that made you I guess empowered really to make that decision, to make the leap? Because I'm sure it was difficult.
Interesting question, and it touches upon a very personal topic and an issue I experienced since I was a little girl, that I experienced from my teachers. You cannot do this. You will not succeed in anything, Stefanie, if you continue like this. Like, I was so bad in mathematics. I had that label, you're not good. You cannot do this. And I don't know when, but I developed that I show you I can do everything. Like, there is nothing in the world I cannot learn, and I will show you. And so I knew, like, without really proof, that I could do this management course. I have not done one before, but I knew I could do that bachelor. I took the leap because I had this intrinsic belief in myself, that this unshakable belief. No, even though other people would tell me, you don't need this, and you think you get a better job with this afterwards. Of course not. You will have to go back to work as a nurse, and no, you cannot come back to the position you were already. You will have to start from zero, because we don't take traders, so to say, back. So there was a lot of back, how do you call it, like backlash, or people were not believing in me, but I did believe in myself, which was very nice. And that just pushed me. And also knowing that, I had a career as a nurse already, that I knew if I need to go back because of some financial trouble, or because I cannot find a management position, then I would always find work, and I would not be in a position where I cannot pay my bills. So that has helped a lot to take the leap of faith and just try it. I didn't have family. I was very young, so why not?
Yeah. Well, I love to hear that you had that inside of you, because I know a lot of people struggle with just kind of shutting down the voices that tell them, no, you can't, and this isn't possible, or that's not going to be a lucrative path for you, and all the naysayers. So I just love hearing that you were able to shut them down and find the strength and the courage to take the leap, which is what ultimately, maybe not right away, led you to where you are today. So I'm curious, after the man gave you that advice, and you figured, okay, well, art, maybe I won't lean into that. Instead, I'll leverage my experience as a nurse. What happened from there?
Then I completely dived into that whole management world, which is a very different one than serving patients in a hospital and connecting. So I immediately understood that the corporate world and management is a tough one. And even though I studied healthcare management, I understood that I had to toughen up myself as well a little bit so that I could actually deal with all of that. I am a very sensitive person and I love human connection, and I just love that. But I started thinking that that's a disadvantage in the job that I'm pursuing. How can I be empathetic and sensitive in a management position? I need to know the hard numbers. I need to go by the rules. I need to take tough decisions. And so for quite a while, I think I was not really who I am. I got a really good job. I had a position at the World Health Organization where I was representing nurses from 53 countries. So I was really a leader for nurses in our European region. And that gave me a lot of pride. And it was certainly very rewarding to feel connected to all those nurses. And I still felt I'm a nurse, like I'm one of you. I'm still there. I still feel it. Just my day-to-day tasks were different. And that was like 5 years. And I got sadder and sadder and more depressed and more depressed. And you would wonder, and I was wondering, you have this amazing job. Isn't that what you wanted? Like a top salary, you have the leading position. You can connect what you learned and experienced as a nurse now in shaping policies to help nurses and patients around 53 countries. Isn't that amazing? And everything sounded so amazing and everything was perfect. It wasn't for me.
What do you feel was missing?
Myself, really. I did that career change without considering myself. I mean, it was an excellent decision, and I wouldn't. I believe like this is just how I see my life. Everything happens for a reason, really, and it was very hard, and many things were very hard. But that doesn't mean I don't appreciate them. But I do think in those. It was 10 years after I graduated that I started seeing who I really am, and not seeing my qualities as a disadvantage for the job or for how I can deliver and what I can achieve. Quite the opposite. So I had really to come to that point of being really sad and very frustrated with myself at the job, realizing I need to redefine what is success for me. What is it? It's not the job title. It's not the salary. I thought it was. I didn't have to report to anyone. I would just finally take my own decisions. But that wasn't it. It wasn't.
Mm-hmm. What was it?
It was really to connect with people and to go back helping them. Like I knew that the job at the World Health Organization would help in the long run, and it would help from the policy level down. But I wouldn't see it. I couldn't see it because I was not engaged. I was not there when that policy arrived at the patient. I wasn't there. I couldn't get that satisfaction. And I always thought of myself as, Stefanie, you're such a people pleaser. You always want people to be happy, and then you don't shake up the environment because you are so keen on everyone being happy. And I always thought that this is bad. We talk about often people pleasing as bad as a trauma response, because you're not able to fully understand where your reactions come from, and you're just avoiding. And that's what I thought for quite some time, and I tried to fight it, but I didn't know what I was fighting. What's really just important for me is that I connect with people, and how can I do that? And in a world where I work with computers and I work with politicians, they are not very keen on connecting. They don't care.
No.
Yeah. So and then I became a mom, in addition, in all these turbulent times of feeling really sad and depressed. And part of it was also because I became a mom, and a lot of unresolved things from my childhood that me personally, I just could never really make sense of. They just came up. And I think a lot of moms listening maybe to this, they can relate that our kids are just, triggering us in whole different ways. And we knew, like, what is this even? I don't know. So I started to become much more aware of, is this my reaction because why? Is this my personality? Why is that important to me? Is that one of my values, or is it one of my pain points? And I realized that with my courage to share my story about my awakening as a parent, and how I engage now with my children, how I parent them in a very conscious way, really breaking a generational pattern of how I was brought up and how my parents were brought up. Like, it's just a natural cycle that happens in everyone's life. There is nothing that went particularly wrong in my childhood, but it just didn't work for me raising my boys like that. And I realized advocating just for parents to know that there are tools out there. You can do this therapy that I did, and it's great. You should do it. Like, I wouldn't shut up about it until a friend said, maybe you should become a therapist, Stefanie. I mean, you just don't stop talking about it, and you're so good with all these things. You love people, you like to connect, you like to help. And first I thought, a step back? Look at me. I'm here, like, with this great payslip every month. Look at me where I am here in this fancy office and having this great title. Of course not. But it didn't leave me. Yeah. And I was quite afraid, I think, that was really a hard decision, to leave the job and to go opening my own practice. I think that was a real leap of faith that I had to do. And I had to release a lot of mental blocks, understanding why am I so afraid? And it's not of financial reasons, or, I mean, of course, that's always a concern, especially when you have kids and you have a mortgage to pay. But it was, it was something else. It was really just the lack of trust that I lost along the way. What I had as a nurse, changing job, I lost it. And you think, Stefanie, you matured, you are so much more experienced and wiser than 15 years ago, but it was not like that.
Yeah, that is so interesting, and I was going to ask how you ended up, because what you do is very it's very niched, right? It's very for a specific audience, and you're doing a specific thing for them. And my question that rose in my mind was, how did you get to that, right? Like, how did you, but I'm hearing you say it, and it sounds like, but correct me if I'm misunderstanding, but it sounds like in becoming a parent and recognizing your own I guess parenting approaches, and having that kind of make you think back on your own childhood, those things combined made you address your own approaches to parenting, kind of uncover, what may have come from your childhood that would inform the approaches that you were taking to your own parenting, and then want to pass that on to other parents. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. Yeah, perfectly summarized. It's really when you become a parent, you step into a new role, and you have to, like, all of a sudden, there's no question even. There is this little human being that needs you, and we hear often, it's just so natural and you will see it works so fine. I don't like, we're 5 years into parenting here in this house. I still don't feel very natural about getting up at 6:30 every morning, and people talking to me from both sides. They need pancakes and French toast. They need to have a glass of milk now, like in the moment. I cannot wait. So many things don't feel natural to me, especially the older they get. But also when my sons were very small, and the breastfeeding journey was not very natural. Like, it was, everything is just so hard. The nights, the combining with work, you have to go to work and function, but you had like a sleepless night because of colics and because of throwing up or nightmares. It's never ending, and your cup is so empty when you go to work, that I felt often I'm so drained, and I just arrived here. How should I get through this day? And it was so much pressure to deliver in meetings, so much pressure to deliver. Then there's pressure to leave on time because you need to pick up the kids. Then there's pressure to attend to their needs, knowing, all the mom guilt that I still carried with me. I was not with them the whole day, and now I have to attend to them, and I have to meet every single need they have in the moment. Yes. And I couldn't give myself any slack. And that was just a cycle. And so I went back to work the next day with the same empty cup, and I didn't know how to refill it, because I was trying to refill everyone's cup here in the house on a regular basis, because I was so worried from my experience growing up that how can I do this better? I don't know, because I want this gentle, conscious parenting to work, but I don't know how, because I don't have a role model for that. I didn't have parent friends in my environment that I could call or ask, how would you do this? So I really needed to dig deep into what are the tools and learn, and just be aware of what my pain points are and what my triggers are, and how I can contain them and work on them so that my kids are not affected in the moment and on the long run.
That's so important and impactful, and everything you're saying fully resonates with me, particularly when you said, they say it's natural, and then until it's not. Before I became a mom, I was always, taking care of kids, like as a teenager, working at daycare centers, and, any type of care with children I did. And so I thought, oh, as a mom, I'm going to absolutely crush it. Until I became a mom and found myself struggling in many different areas. I was so taken aback, like, whoa, I thought I was going to be a superstar at this thing. And not in all aspects. No, not at all. But yeah, everything you're saying is so true. And I think it's so important, the work that you're doing, because of the fact that a lot of who we are as adults comes from our childhood. I mean, it goes without saying almost. So the fact that, you are bringing your own experiences and realizations into the work that you do, and passing on this knowledge to stop the cycle, as you phrased it yourself, is just so important. So huge kudos to you in just doing the work that you do, and getting to that realization that was your path in life.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I guess my other thing that comes to mind, my last question, maybe, hopefully, I tend to be full of questions, but when it comes to parent coaching and hypnotherapy and combining the two, how did you get to that realization? How did that come about?
That was really a process. So I started out with hypnotherapy because this is how I healed my trigger. When I became a mom, I found myself very, very sad. And I went to see I went to see a specialist, and they said, yeah, you have some signs of postpartum depression, but not quite. I just didn't feel like myself, and they wouldn't classify my situation as we need to do something about it, just sending me back home with my newborn. And I knew I couldn't bond with him the way I wanted. So I reached out to hypnotherapists that I got to know at a dinner party of a mutual friend. It was really a coincidence that we met, and over dinner we were talking about her work and what she does, and she said, I like to explain my work to those who have no idea about hypnotherapy, like I take the thorn out of your stomach. And I looked at her and I said, this is what I have. You need to take it out. And that was very different to my experience with another mental health professional who said, yeah, quite not, a few signs of, but it will just disappear. You can just go back home. So I felt really this resonated with me, and I saw her for a session. And she combines hypnosis really with cognitive behavioral therapy. So we really could work on those limiting beliefs that I developed as a child of I'm not lovable. And if I don't feel lovable, how can I give love to this bundle of little baby that I just brought home from the hospital? I couldn't. I didn't know how. It was not natural to me. But that one session was so profound on that specific issue that I could go home being completely free from that problem that I had of not being able to bond with him. And the course of my son's future changed in that moment. And I realized how impactful my mental health is for him. And it we all love our kids to pieces. Yeah. And we want the best, and we want them to be happy, but so that they can be happy, we need to be well with ourselves.
Yeah.
And then 4 years later, only 4 years later, I started my training as a therapist, because I was so afraid. I think I knew deep inside that was my path, but that also meant becoming even more aware of everything that has happened to me and everything that I still carry with me. Because in order to be a good therapist and balanced with myself, so that I can give the best service, and that I can receive all of my clients' messages. The stories we hear are just heartbreaking, and I knew that I need to be mentally well and stable in order to do that. So it took me 4 years to take the decision to go into the training, and then I did. Once I took the decision, then it was clear, but it was not clear to me at that point how my work would shape. So I knew that hypnotherapy is very, very powerful, but what I only learned along the way in the past year or so since I opened my practice is how this can help parents, really, because we hear all this generic parenting advice. We read parenting books. We follow parent coaches on Instagram, and everything sounds so, everything makes sense, how you should respond to your child, and you know about the mental development, and you know that cognitively they cannot do any other way than how they do, and their tantrums are age appropriate. We know all that. If you're a little bit into human development, this is what you really become aware of, and you understand your child. But what I realized was, even though you know all of this and you have the tools at hand, but when you are in a fight or flight mode as a parent, when you get into this red zone of your feelings and you cannot regulate yourself and your nervous system and your emotional system, you cannot use those tools. It's not possible. you can know about them and you can read about them when you are putting the kids down in the evening on the couch. It's fine. But I realized that there was one thing that is missing from all that, which is your inner work that you need to do as a parent, so that you can actually apply those tools. And this is really how the program or my work took shape over a few months.
So what does, when I think back to the beginning of your career journey, and you were talking about being stuck and your cup was not full, and all the things you had described earlier on, the flip side of that, I imagine, is now true for you. And I just want to hear, how the work that you do brings you joy each day.
It does bring me joy because I am connected again to people. Mostly I am just virtually connected, but I do take a lot of joy out of it. And you and I, we talked before we did this recording, and I mentioned that, whenever someone says the internet world is not real, I tend to disagree with that, because I feel it as very real. I connect with my clients, I connect with my patients. People come to me because they have real problems. They're really real people. And I'm a real person, and I can support them in their recovery and on their journey, really. So that gives me great, great pleasure that I have this social interaction again. So that's amazing. And what I love is seeing my clients and patients just rise above what has happened to them, and they can start taking ownership of their life again. And that might be, you take responsibility of how you parent your child, and you stop blaming, but my father used to be a very violent and aggressive father. Yeah, yes, and we acknowledge that, and we acknowledge the pain that occurred because of that. But this doesn't help in your parenting. You need to stop blaming your parents and take ownership of the life that you have now, because your child will not say in 25 years, I'm good because she had a difficult childhood. It's not how it works, because you cannot redeem certain things you said or did. So that's really, really nice to see. I love just how they get out of the little hole that they felt they lived in. And as a parent, I loved one client said to me, since I work with you, I felt like really the crab shell that I acquired as a child, and my children are luring me out of this crab shell to be vulnerable, to be open, to be fully myself, present with them. And I tend to crawl back into that hermit crab shell. But since I work with you, I don't need to go back anymore, because I can be vulnerable with my children. I can be open. And a lot of the stuff that comes up in coachings, I mean, they all go back to childhood. Are we safe? Are we heard? Are we understood? Are we loved? And these are just such important topics. It's all about love.
Yeah. What an amazing journey. And again, I'm so impressed with what it is that you're doing for people. To hear those specific testimonials, I think, is so powerful. And I can only imagine the other things that people are saying to you, and it must just feel so incredible for you. If people are interested in keeping in touch with you, or working with you, or just understanding more, how can they get in contact?
So I hang out on Instagram a lot. My Instagram handle is @Hypnostefanie, and also I'm on Facebook @Hypnostefanie. And then I have a website, stefaniefernandes.com, where there's lots of buttons you click on and you can schedule a call with me. And I also have like plenty of calls with people, just coffee calls, which is quite nice to get a feel of who I am. We don't need to make a plan in that call of, are you going to work with me? Are you not going to work with me? The most important is that the vibe is right and that we connect. And this is the only way how we can find this out is if we have a chat.
That's right. Yeah. And I can attest, even if it doesn't end up in some sort of working relationship, people are going to get something out of you. I know that I have, and we have connected. You mentioned being able to have a connection virtually. I think I can attest to, the connection that you and I have established in a very, very short time. So I think everyone is just going to be delighted to talk to you if they haven't gathered that from, this episode and hearing you speak and hearing the warmth in your voice. I definitely encourage people to just connect with you on any level. So
Thank you so much. You're so sweet.
well, thank you for being here, Stefanie. This was a great conversation. I, again, appreciate you taking the time out of your day.
Thanks so much. I loved it.